start your day the right way. It's Marv and Rauh in the morning.
Yes, and happy Friday to you all. It's Marv and Rauh in the morning, and guess what? I think we're just going to talk today until we decide we don't want to talk anymore, because that's exactly what we're here to do. Talk some sports, have a good time. And Nick, are you surprised that in the year of our Lord, 2026, we continue to have bangers one after another when it comes down to these football games and just really games in general? It just does not stop. And when this generational run ends, I mean, does sports end? Do we begin to just start having boring sports forever? I just can't see an end to this. Absolutely insane way to begin the college football semifinals last night. Ole Miss falling to Miami. I mean, the other way around. No, I said it right. Yeah, see, look at that. This is, and crazy stuff. Wild game. Wow. Lots of other things to talk about. We got some firings, some ones that we did not expect, and then a couple other things that we need to discuss on this show. But either way, I mean, retracted statements, GMs saying their directed path. I mean, making free agency, maybe a little test to it. There's a lot of things to discuss on today's show.
It's a busy Friday. Yeah, no, we got to get started with the Ole Miss Miami game for obvious reasons. And just to comment on the heater that we're on, I'm enjoying every second of it. I am scared that once we get back to like normal games, it's like I'm going to be able to or unable to come down from this high. Like I'm going to be like, this is the most boring game of all time, even though it's probably just going to be a standard finish because we have been on such a ridiculous heater. But no, I ton to talk about on this super loaded Friday. Let's talk until we don't want to anymore, huh?
Yeah, there's going to be a game where like a team wins by 10. And we're going to be like, that was the worst game I've ever seen.
Boring.
What do you mean there wasn't a fourth quarter comeback drive? Like,
what do you mean there weren't five lead changes in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened in this game. Miami takes down Ole Miss 31-27. It comes down to the final drive where Carson Beck tiptoes it in. I mean, to be honest with you, I was a little mad watching him walk it in because the way that he did it, it was a little petty, but I understand. Energy was high. Energy was really high. And that drive that Carson Beck had at the end of the game was absolutely insane. Mario Cristobal, he gets his team to a national championship. Miami, this is the team that nobody wanted in the college football playoffs, said they didn't belong there. Talking about them over Notre Dame, saying, of course, they beat them head to head, but they didn't belong there after how Notre Dame looked. Of course, the BYU conversation, of course, all the other things. They were the final team to make the playoff field. And guess what? They're going to be one of two final teams left standing. They're going to the national championship game. Oh, and they're going to be in away jerseys in their own home stadium in Miami. What do you think about this game overall, man? It was a wild one.
Yeah, this one was incredible. Ole Miss, it was such an interesting game because I think I texted you at one point and I was like, gosh, I feel like Ole Miss is winning this game, but they're just not scoring. Like it feels like they're the better team. And then once the kind of scuffle of the fourth quarter happened, it felt like, okay, well, maybe Miami's the better team, but somehow Ole Miss is capitalizing a little bit better right now, you know, with interceptions, the one interception in the game and their touchdown drives late. And, you know, it was just an odd game for me. But it was really, really enjoyable. And to comment on like Miami's last drive, it was surgical. And I will be very clear, like I wasn't happy about it. Like I was under the kind of mindset, if Ole Miss moves on, we're going to get 3 games in a row of Trinidad Chambliss, 3 games in a row of this Ole Miss team that refuses to quit. I mean, I have never, actually, I shouldn't say I've never seen anything like it, but that last drive, what they have 18 seconds, they covered 40 yards in 12. Yeah. It was just 2 lasers from Chambliss. And then they took a shot at the end zone. It didn't work out. But, I mean, that's the kind of thing that, like, most teams are done there. They get a shot at a lateral play because they were able to stop the clock or whatever. They did have one timeout to start that drive. So they would have a way to stop the clock before it ended, and they could try some laterals. But they had a legit shot at the end zone. And you could, you know, whether or not that was a PI call, I don't love that it wasn't called. But I also, it's, you know, sometimes you got to let the boys play a little bit. So I'm not going to die on that hill, but this was a phenomenal game. And I think it really showed what Trinidad Chambliss is capable of. If he goes to the NFL, I think his stock has been, you know, just exponentially boosted by this playoff run. And, you know, for Miami, You got to love it for the team. You really do. This is a magical run for them to get from, basically last team in 10 seed to now in the championship, playing technically at home. But I will say, like, they should probably just wear away jerseys every time they play there, because I mean, who goes to Miami games,
Hopefully that changes now, but you're right. The crowd hasn't been great over the last couple of years there. Mario Crispo might be turning it around now because he brings them back to national championship presence. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Before that game-winning drive happened, and I think I sent you a text during this as well, so a little behind the scenes here for everybody listening in. I knew Miami was scoring on that game-winning drive. Do you know why I knew? The broadcast showed Michael Irvin on the sideline.
You texted me that.
They showed Michael Irvin on the sideline. I was like, oh man, this is an omen. Miami is going to win this football game. Like, they wouldn't just show him getting ready to take his belt off his waist. Like, they wouldn't do that. Right. And that's something that absolutely, if I'm Miami, of course, I'm ecstatic that I'm going to the national championship game, but I'm happy in how they got there, because against Ohio State, 0 penalties. Last night, 10 penalties, 74 yards. They were not the most disciplined team last night, and they still found a way to win against Ole Miss, who I think has an incredible defense. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Ole Miss and their defense in another segment later on today. But what Pete Golding has done, let's not forget what Pete Golding has gone through over the last month. Obviously, Lane Kiffin leaving, the crazy things happening, everything going down. And then this past week, he loses some of his coaches going back to LSU, running back coach being one of them. And then, boom, there they are. That's exactly what happens, right? Trinidad Chambliss says, you know what, I'm coming back if I get a waiver. Kawan Lacey says, you know what, I'm coming back. Everything starts going in the direction. And on the defensive side, you're starting to see, like, man, this defense is good. This is not a fluke. There's only one SEC team left in the tournament, and it's Ole Miss. A lot of people are like, hey, that doesn't sound right. What dimension are we in? I think this is going to be the new norm. I think this is the new norm now. The Ole Miss is going to be right back there with Pete Golding on top. He's recruiting well. The portal looks good. And I don't think this is going to be a one-time thing for Ole Miss. This team is going to be back. But if I'm Miami, I'm super ecstatic knowing that I took them down on a non-disciplined way. Malachi Toney, are you kidding me? This is a guy. Yeah, this is a guy that just turned 18.
He's supposed to be in high school.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in the 2026 class. He just turned 18 this past September, and basically on the national stage is just taking off. When he gets the ball, he's one of the most dangerous people in the country. He's easily the top freshman in the country, and now he's just absolutely shown off. Incredible.
I was in awe. And on that last drive, you talk about the Michael Irvin thing. You threw out "oh no" before the Michael Irvin text, and I was like, is he ahead of me? What's happening? Like, I don't know what he's referencing. Anyway, that was interesting in that regard. But then on that last drive, I was like, if they get the ball to Toney, I don't know if Ole Miss can stop them. Like, I legitimately think, because there was all the conversation about, hey, Cam, all I can think of is Cam Ward. Miami's not throwing the ball down the field, right? Carson Beck is only hitting behind the line, short screen throws or whatever. I'm like, if they just continuously hand the ball to Toney, it's going to be a touchdown. Like, there is no stopping that guy. So the speed is incredible. He went up for that one-hander. I think he got up about 15 feet in the air, basically spinning away from it. The ball came in and stuck to his hand. It was just glued there. Obviously wasn't, in bounds, because it was heel came down out of bounds, but phenomenal grab. So look for him over the next few years. And Miami, I don't think is really going to go anywhere. I still think Miami's a legit team. They haven't finished this season. They'll be without Carson Beck next year, of course, because I don't know if the NCAA will grant him an eighth year, excuse me. I guess you never know with the NCAA, but
fair.
I think the better outlook, honestly, between these two teams is Ole Miss. I do wonder if Pete Golding's going to be the guy to just light this whole thing up and become not the next Kurt Signetti, but the next guy to come in, take over a program. And you're already in the SEC. You kind of have a bit of a head start. Just take it and run with it. And this Ole Miss team's squared up, ready to roll.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because you're saying the question like, yeah, they're in the SEC. They have a head start. Do they? Because it's now been almost 1,100 days since the SEC has played a national championship game.
Here's
Right?
why I say they have a head start.
Yet they still find a way to get half their teams in the playoffs every year.
That's what I was going to say is they don't play to the standard that they get credit for, right? Everyone assumes that they're world beaters, and they haven't really shown that. Obviously, Alabama did a long time ago, back when the dinosaurs were roaming the planet. But since then, they haven't really been there. So that's why I say they get the benefit of the doubt. Like they're starting ahead. They don't have to be, like if you're from the Big 12, you have to win the Big 12 to make the playoff. We've seen that over the last 2 years. An 11-1 BYU conference runner-up that only lost to one team did not get in. So by that math, you have to be the conference champion. You don't have to do that in the SEC.
How long until the narrative goes away about the SEC having a bad year? Because although Ole Miss obviously made it to the semifinals, let's look at actually what the college football playoffs looked like for the SEC. They went 3-5, and the only wins were against themselves. The Alabama-Oklahoma game, right, being one of them. The Ole Miss-Georgia game being another one. And then the other win was against Tulane. So not a great look. But again, that's not going to matter. All that's going to matter is that look how many teams we got in the college football playoffs, right?
Well, I can't wait for Greg Sankey and them all offseason. We should, SEC should be granted 10 teams automatically. I think we should go for double digits. No, they shouldn't.
No, this I think this proves we're going a little off topic here, but I think this showed that okay, we maybe need to be a little different. That Miami shouldn't have been the last team in. There should have. I think I'm okay with not having a conversation about Miami being in or not. Alabama and Oklahoma should have been maybe the conversation for sure. Miami's earned $20 million for the ACC technically with their trip to the national championship, but the ACC has said the Hurricanes are keeping 100% of it. So not only are you going to have a team that has been rising right now, you're getting another $20 million. And then look, we just saw this happen, or this conversation happened last week when they played Ohio State. Some of those big-time Ohio State players come from South Florida. If Mario Cristobal gets this team right back to where it needs to be, those guys aren't leaving for Ohio State anymore. Those guys are going to stay at the U. This right here means a lot more. Going to the national championship game, being able to play the national championship game in Miami, and if they win, that's another story. But they've already won because they've already proven that Miami is back on the map, and I think this is going to help them for the next 4 to 5 years under Mario Cristobal. I think you can truly say that Miami has returned to become a powerhouse, whether you like it or not, whether you think that they're a dark horse in this playoffs. What they're doing right now is insane, and I think this is really impressive because there's going to be a lot of South Florida kids that say, you know what, Ohio State doesn't even sound that good anymore. It snows up there. Give me the Crocodiles. Cold. Give me the Hurricanes. Give me the Miami Hurricanes, and I'm sticking at home. I can totally see that happening now.
Yeah, I do have a feeling we're going to be getting a lot of Michael Irvin taking his belt off over the next few years. You make a great point. I think Florida has just a ton of talent as far as high school recruits. And when you've got a team like Miami, because there is so much competition down there, Florida State, Florida, Miami, just to name a few, and then even teams like USF or the blue one with the Owls. I'm blanking on the school name.
FIU?
No, not FIU. It's FAU, I believe, Florida Atlantic. Just loaded with opportunity. And when one of those teams is that good, they're likely going to stay because it is just so nice down there. Last point I wanted to make here. Can you imagine what Miami's going to be like, win or lose after this game? I mean, that place is going to be chaos. Whether they win, it's a celebration. If they lose, I mean, you show up to a big time event with drinks because it's either a celebration or drinking in sorrow. Miami is going to be chaos after the national championship game.
How's it got to feel? It's got to feel amazing to know that you're getting a home game for the Natty.
Like that's like playing the Super Bowl at home. Like that's why all these teams are putting domes on their stadiums, is because they want to be able to play the biggest game at home. This is not only like playing in the national championship game as a player has to be like the coolest feeling of all time, but then you get to be in your home locker room. Like what? Yeah.
Let's close out Ole Miss here. Obviously a great season in the what a college football run for Trinidad Chambliss, as we've mentioned. I hope he gets his waiver. I want to see him play for Ole Miss again in 2026. And I will say this, and I think you said it to me last night. I'll watch every single one of his games. He's so electric. But in his college football run, just those games alone, 985 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I mean, what he did was incredible in it. And of course, the Georgia game was incredible. He was throwing heat checks against Kirby Smart. He wasn't amazing in this game against Miami. He was good, especially towards the end. The beginning, that defensive line, that elite defensive line of Miami got to him. But overall, I think we're definitely seeing a star in the making. I think one more year of college football would do him good. I don't think he should enter the draft unless he has to, meaning, of course, the waiver does not work. If he gets that waiver and he returns, I mean, I think you're looking at him being one of the top quarterbacks. I don't think the top, because Arch Manning's coming out in 27. I think you're looking at him being one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft in the 27 draft.
Absolutely. I mean, not only is he like really, really good, but he can make those ridiculous plays. Like he can put the ball on a rope in the size of a bucket, the size of the ball. We know that he's accurate. I would say that's maybe my biggest gripe with him is his accuracy. Every now and then he's not exactly on point. And for that to be the area where he could improve is saying something, because I think his accuracy is actually really, really solid. The ball zips out of his hand and his legs. I was going to text you this. I ended up not texting you it because he was so fast that it wouldn't have even made sense. He gets out of the pocket faster than I've ever seen anybody, I think, ever do it. And I don't mean he's rushing the scramble. I don't like, he'll sit in there. He took a huge shot on that. I think it was ended up being a targeting call down the field. But he took a shot later in this game. So he will sit in the pocket. But when he decides to leave, he is, boom, gone. All of a sudden, 5 yards away, rolling, and he's able to make throws on the run. So, yeah, you said it best, and I did text you last night. Like, he is lightning in a bottle. Not only is he good, he is fun to watch. I mean, he is entertainment in football form, like if you were to put it into one player. So, huge shout out to Trinidad Chambliss. I wish we could have gotten to see more Kwan Lacey with the whole hamstring deal. I think that was maybe what undid the Rebels in this game, to be completely honest. They didn't lean on Chambliss' legs enough. They gave Miami the ball back with too much time, this, that, and the other. Their season's over. Let's move on. Cannot wait for next year. Hopefully Chambliss gets to come back, because I will watch literally every single game they have. And if he goes to the pros, I will be making sure that I get an NFL Sunday ticket so I can see it there.
Do you think that this team has what it takes? You know, obviously right now we're recording this on Friday. So with the sake of, shelf life reasons, we're not going to say it's either against Indiana or Oregon. That game is yet to be played. But you think this team has what it takes, Miami, to win the whole dang thing, regardless of who they play between Indiana and Oregon?
The way I see it is they have to be perfect against Indiana. They can play a game like this against Oregon. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I think they're very capable either way. We'll see how good Indiana is, because, right, like against Alabama, I don't think anyone was expecting that dominant of a win. If Indiana beats Oregon by like 30 points, I would be concerned about like anybody facing Indiana. They just might be the team of destiny. But this Miami team is capable. They have the offensive weapons. They have that defensive line that you mentioned. They are super, super powered where it feels like you need to be. And Carson Beck, I mean, like we mentioned, 7 years of experience. That's going to go a long way. He's played in the playoff before. Now he's played in a few games this year already. He'll be at home. Like, you can't count the Canes out, but I think it depends on who they play is how I'm going to approach this game, whether or not they need to be perfect, kind of like they were against Ohio State, or if they're able to have some wiggle room like they did against the Rebels here.
Love it. I got over 100 people, just about 100 people across all the social media channels watching this live show this morning. Really appreciate everybody chiming in. See some comments popping in as well. Really appreciate the engagement. If you haven't already, tell a friend, share this podcast, share the video. We're just over 150 subscribers, just starting this show right here at Marv and Rauh in the morning, bringing you weekday coverage Monday through Friday on all your top stories. Really appreciate that. So if you haven't already hit that subscribe, share it to a friend. Tell him about Marv and Rauh in the morning. Look, what if I was going to tell you that the Ole Miss game wasn't the craziest college football news of the night? Would you believe me? Because it was a wild news. There was some wild stuff, but the transfer portal is open, and it just keeps giving you some crazy stuff over and over again. And the craziest thing that I think we've ever seen in the transfer portal is what just happened last night. Washington Athletics and quarterback Damon Williams have put out some statements. Damon Williams obviously put it out a couple days ago that he was going to leave Washington, enter the transfer portal after just 4 days before entering a contract agreement to stay with the Huskies for 2026. Well, after probably reading his contract and after his lawyer decides that he's no longer going to represent him, it seems like Damon Williams has put out a statement saying, after thoughtful reflection with my family, I'm excited to announce that I will continue my football journey at the University of Washington. This is an official statement, by the way. He says, I'm deeply grateful with my coaches, teammates, and everyone in the program for fostering an environment where I can thrive both as an athlete and as an individual. I am fully committed and focused on contributing to what we are building. There's some other things that he wants to talk about, but initially that's the beginning of his statement. I mean, let's be honest, it's a little hilarious, especially those words right there. I am fully committed, when just hours before he was willing to go chase a bag somewhere, most likely LSU.
That's, you really question the integrity of that, to be completely honest. If it's like, the first thing I thought was not that like he doesn't mean it or whatever, but like, how do you, what does that even mean? You're fully committed. Was that when that comment came out, I was wondering if we were going to get like a hacked. That statement was released without my knowing. Like, how do you completely 180 from, yeah, this is best for me, I'm going to go ahead and move on, to, you know what? After careful consideration, I think I'm going to go ahead and return. I don't see the line of thought process there. And I do think that there's going to be, and it feels so unnecessary now, but like there is so much repairing that needs to be done, unfortunately. And obviously the timing of the whole thing was just really rough. When his statement came out, the fact that he hadn't talked to anybody prior, like didn't even say like, hey, by the way, I'm thinking about it, because he had just signed the contract that said explicitly, like, you can't go into the transfer portal. I was expecting to get another one of those, I believe it was Xavier Lucas that dropped out of Wisconsin and then enrolled at Miami. That type of situation with the whole like contract and everything. It ends up settling down, and this is probably for the best. But this is the way I see it, and I just want to fire this question back at you. Does Washington have to do something about this? Because I feel like if nothing ends up happening here, if Washington just completely brushes this off, which obviously you want Damon Williams on your team, so you can't just get rid of him or whatever, but they have to do something basically to set precedent here. I feel like the whole college football world is watching, and they are in a position to either reprimand or like what needs to happen here basically to avoid this happening down the road.
I've covered college football for about a decade now, and completely followed through this brand new of NIL transfer portal. I've seen it from firsthand, basically. You know, with the most part, obviously there's been some transfers and things in the past, but nothing like this that we've seen over the first, this last decade. I will tell you this: when things like this happen, now this scenario doesn't happen too often, of course, especially the way it happened. We'll get into it in just a minute. There's going to be some people that it doesn't matter what you do, you're not gonna be able to replace this damage. You're not gonna be able to repair it.
Right.
And it's usually the older generation, the older alumni, which usually means the older donors. Some of those are willing to say, you know what, just get through it. You signed a contract, play your games, but when you're done, you're
done.
You're a former Husky. You're not a Husky for life kind of thing. There's some people that are going to be like that, where they're just going to move on. Other people, and this is probably the majority these days, the ones that live on social media, the younger generation of the college football fan, are very easy in the times heals all wounds category, especially if he wins football games. If he gets Washington to the college football playoffs last year, no one is going to remember that he dropped his statement saying he was leaving the University of Washington when they were doing a celebration of life for a University of Washington soccer player, which was the worst timing, might I add, because in this world of college athletics, athletes are never been more disconnected than what they used to be. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. But the fact that you don't have an idea what's going on at your own university, and I mean, you're just showing us a complete selfish look, that's one thing. But I will say that the unfortunate part is that if you win, the majority of fans will forget that ever happened. It'll become just a lore of the story. And I think you have to look at it from both edges of the sword. And if you don't, then I think you're kind of dumb. You have to know that both sides are going to happen. There's going to be some people that can never forgive you. They're going to say,
Mhm.
guess what? You signed a contract. You're here. You might as well be quarterback on this team. The other sides are going to say, just win, baby. Just win.
Yeah. Well, the more that he wins, it will get brought up because it'll be in these bigger games. It'll get brought up throughout the entire season if they continue to win, right? If they're playing in, the first round of the playoffs, they'll say, "Remember when this happened?" But they'll only bring it up one time. It'll be a big part of the story early on. And if you lose, then it becomes, after an interception late in the game or a fail, 3 and out or whatever. That's not really a story, but it's mentioned more times by the broadcast, which is then just replanting that seed into the viewers over and over and over. Like, this is like, there's something here with like potential team chemistry. Remember, he did this like just a few months ago, and then they don't win the game. And then it's like, oh, I wonder if this was a case of like what happened here. That's totally valid. I think that's what you're talking about with like win and it cures all. If you just keep winning, it'll show that it didn't matter. It wasn't a locker room breaker. It wasn't that big of a deal as far as output on the field. And so there is that to look forward to if you're Damon Williams. If you can just win games, it will all probably be okay. I saw a lot of people talking about, did he tank his draft stock with this? I don't know. I mean, yes, maybe no. I think it's one of those things where a lot of places are going to be able to say he's just a college kid, made a huge mistake, but it's one mistake, essentially released one graphic. I think you can get over that. I just wonder what this means for college football, because this one ends up being not that big a deal, right? If he ends up going back and wins or loses, whatever, he stayed there, he honored his contract. Was weird that he released a statement, but it's whatever. We were heading down a very real path, though, where he just basically left after signing a contract. And then what does that make contracts? What does that make commitments? We're already at a place where if a player commits to a school, I don't even think twice about it, because there's a 99% chance that they're going to say, oh, I'm going to actually, decommit here, verbally commit over here. Once I committed, I just got a bunch of other calls from these bigger schools that now they know about me and they're willing to pay me more. That's already happening versus once players are at school, sign contracts. Oh, once they sign this contract, someone else is willing to outbid it because they know the number. Like, the whole landscape is just chaos right now. And I'm looking towards Washington as a precedent center here, because Wisconsin, Miami, nothing really came of that last year.
Yeah, 100%. I think that you're right there. I think you hit the nail right on the head. When you're talking about his NFL draft stock, this isn't the first time a college athlete has made a boneheaded mistake and maybe received bad advice as well. So I don't think it's going to impact him. What I do think will impact him is this. And I think you're right. Winning cures all. And I think I'm kind of circling the wagon here, circling back to what you're saying, maybe saying it a little differently. But the moment he has an issue with a coach on the sidelines, the moment that he has an issue saying one receiver didn't run the right route, the moment they struggle against an FCS or a G5 opponent, any of those moments happening, that narrative is coming right back up. Yeah. He brought unwanted stress, unwanted pressure, unneeded pressure on a Washington team, a Big Ten team that had a great season. Maybe it wasn't the perfect season, but had a great season, to where the fact that if you now you're sitting at unneeded pressure. And the moment that happens, the moment that you get to the point that you are no longer maybe out of the college football playoffs, things happen in 2026, all they're going to talk about is the fact, well, this team could have been better if it wasn't for the offseason scrum.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it's going to be. And it's sad because it's a completely avoidable scenario. It ended up being just one of those things where if he didn't end up releasing the graphic, it's not even a story. It's maybe a conversation that was had behind closed doors, and there's a couple people that are upset about it, but it doesn't make it to the public. Now it's like every Husky fan knows about this, and every team that they play is going to bring this up. Like now it's spiraled to this whole thing that ended up being a whole lot bigger than it needed to be. And you hate that for Washington. You hate that for everything, that's going on over there. But like you said it best, like literally because it's January 9th, in 10 months on November 9th, if they have 7-8 wins, I don't know what it would be at that point in the season, no one will really be talking about this. They'll just be talking about Damon Williams Heisman? Is Damon Williams the Heisman candidate? Like the media moves so fast. So it really comes down to how successful they are.
Today in history, 2017 was a college football national championship. It was in Tampa. It was not in Miami, although that's game this year's going to be in Miami. Remember this game, 2017? Clemson beating number 1 Alabama, 35-31. The shock of the world that game was. Clemson taking down Bama. That was a fun game. You remember that one, 2017? It was a good one.
What were you going to say? You're old enough for that? Yeah, I do remember
I tried
that
to find a today history that was at least old enough for you today, like that you at least had something, right? This was a great game. This was a 14-1 Clemson team. It was 13-1 Clemson team versus a 14-0 Alabama team heading in. This was the Deshaun Watson game. 420 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he was absolutely Deshaun Watson versus Jalen Hurts. This was college football epicness, and I think this really put Clemson on the map.
This was a really interesting time period. I know this isn't exactly what we're talking about. We'll get back to the topics we have planned for today. If you're listening, shout out to you. But this time period, this 2016, 2017-ish time period, you had like Warriors, Cavs were consistently showing up in the NBA finals. Clemson, Bama felt like they were just every year in the college football playoffs. In the NFL, it was like you could probably argue like Brady Manning maybe would have been around this time period. It was a little after that, but my point is this something about the like 2014 to 2018-ish time frame. There was a lot of repeats in championship games. And this one, Clemson, Alabama, was one of my favorites growing up. I always rooted for Clemson just because I hated Alabama at that time. And this win, I remember personally. So yes, I was old enough for this one. And this one was a real fun game. Shout out to the Tigers. They've fallen off entirely. Dabo Swinney doesn't know that the transfer portal actually has a website that he has to go to. But back in 2017, man, were they good.
That's so wild. Dabo is like the one where he is just not embracing the transfer portal at all. He's not.
No.
And you think that's going to change eventually. He put in a slide. He put in like an entire athletic complex to that place. You think players would want to come here in the portal, and Dabo's like, nah, man. If you didn't come to Clemson initially, then we don't want you. I mean, that's got to change. It's got to change big time for sure. All right, that was fun. Let's head on over. Let's talk a little NFL here. I mean, another shocker that happened yesterday. Maybe not so much of a shocker. Maybe just the timing is shocking to me. The Miami Dolphins decide to part ways with Mike McDaniel after not so great season, obviously eliminated from the playoffs. They started off really terrible. They wound up keeping themselves in the hunt towards the end, but it just wasn't good enough. There's a lot of decisions to have to be made for the Miami Dolphins over the next couple weeks, I guess, this offseason. Obviously, they have a new GM. They have to get a new head coach. Tua Tagovailoa, obviously, what you're going to do with him. Statement from Miami Dolphins says, after careful evaluation and extensive discussions since the season ended, I have made the decision, and it's the owner, Stephen M. Ross, that our organization is in need of comprehensive change. I informed Mike McDaniel this morning that he has been relieved of his duties as head coach. I love Mike, want to thank him for his hard work, commitment, and energy that's brought to the organization. I wish him and his family the best moving forward. One, this is probably the most straightforward of a statement from all the firing of coaches. Just looked and said, hey, we need the change. Thanks. We're moving on. What's your thoughts about this, about the firing of Mike McDaniel? Is this the right choice for Miami?
I think so. And my first question comes to, when you look at what Miami did under Mike McDaniel over the last 4 years, 9-8, 11-6, 8-9, 7-10. Like, what better record are you looking for here? Are you trying to push then for a Super Bowl? Are you trying to push for what is now the mark? Because this is, they didn't finish
the Jets. That's a good start.
Totally valid, actually. I mean, they haven't won the division with McDaniel, but they haven't come in last either. So I wonder where the ceiling, or I guess what the expectation moves to. But the other thought process that I kind of had, the question mark I had was, what does this mean for coaches like McDaniel? Because McDaniel, when he became the head coach at Miami, was this nerdy kind of, which I will say the Walter White arc is 100%. I saw a tweet that is absolutely accurate. I mean, Miami got to McDaniel, but the point is that he was this analytical player coach, And it just never really felt to me, maybe I'm wrong in this, like he commanded the room. Like he never really was the guy. He was a part of the system and he was the guy at the top of the pyramid. But if it was his way, he would basically have been a player. He would have just been another part of the team, is how I interpreted it. And so I wonder if that kind of coach, basically that archetype, takes a hit here with McDaniel losing, the rest of his time here in Miami. And if he ends up going somewhere else and has success, then that archetype gets some credibility back. But I wonder about that moving forward. As far as for the Dolphins, I think this was the right play. I wonder what the ceiling is and what the expectation is, but you just weren't. It was pretty clear that this is what you were going to get from McDaniel. You were going to get middle of the AFC East. You might get a playoff appearance here or there, but if you have to play anywhere cold, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter what shirts you wear for pregame, you're cooked. Like that's how it felt for this Miami team. It felt like they constantly had something going on, but I guess that's Miami for you. So I think it makes sense. I do wonder if they know something about Harbaugh that we don't, because this firing kind of came out of nowhere a little bit after the Harbaugh news. But I don't think, even if they don't get Harbaugh, like I don't hate this move. I think that they were probably ready to move on.
Yeah, almost every NFL insider immediately when Mike McDaniel was fired said that the Miami Dolphins have not contacted Harbaugh yet. I find that very hard to believe.
It was weird that a lot of them said that too.
Yeah, I feel like the narrative is setting up to where they're trying to shock the system, saying, "Oh, surprise, he's a Miami Dolphin head coach." No, I think that's exactly what happened. There's no reason why you have a careful consideration a couple days after everybody else is fired, and you decide to make that move after a guy like John Harbaugh is fired from Baltimore. I think there are two big-time head coaches out there that are going to get head coaching jobs that were just fired. It's John Harbaugh and it's Kevin Stefanski. I think one of them is going to be a Miami Dolphins head coach. I think the other one's going to be a New York Giants head coach. As for Mike McDaniel, I think you're right. I think if there was a conversation about could he lead the room, could he do it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But if you don't think he could have, and he just wanted to play ball, he just wanted to coach ball, well, then maybe he's better as a coordinator. And that's not anything wrong to say. There are many great coaches that just are better off as a coordinator rather than a head coach, because there's a couple extra roles you have to do that just don't fit your psyche, your way of life, if you will. If he becomes an offensive coordinator again, which there's already been people potentially lining up for him for his services as an OC, Detroit being one. I know he has a great relationship with Dan Quinn. They need an offensive coordinator as well. That's where I see him going. I know that there's my social media feed, I see a lot of Buffalo fans saying that if Buffalo moves on from Joe Brady, they should be calling Mike McDaniel. I don't see that ever happening personally. I think that not because Buffalo doesn't want him, but because Mike McDaniel will have other options. My guess is this. I'll go hot take here. He either lands in Detroit or he lands in Washington. I'm leaning Washington with Jaden Daniels as the new OC under Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I do wonder if he moves back into an OC role. That's just the way that I view it. And I can't imagine players. I'm not saying I have like a player's mindset, but I just imagine that players have a hard time with a coach like that, and maybe not, because the coaching at the NFL level is so different. I've talked to a few guys who coach at the NFL level, and what they basically tell me is that like it is so much more of a partnership than you would probably ever think, because these guys that are in the NFL are the best of the best. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been coached for, generally at this point, 20 years, or maybe not 20 years as a rookie, but 15 at least, I would say. Pop Warner is, right around 7. And so they know football. They just kind of need someone to design their workouts, design the training, go through film with it. Like it's not, and point things out, obviously, but they know a lot. They don't necessarily need to be taught like this is a 7 tech, this is a C gap, this is what a dip and rip looks like. Like the coaching isn't the same. So maybe it does work out, but the way that I view it is like he probably makes more sense as an OC. He's that offensive minded guy. And I was a big fan of what Miami's offense was a few years ago, especially with Hill when he was really, really healthy. But I'll be very curious to see where he ends up going. You mentioned Stefanski or Harbaugh. I mean, I feel like one of them has to be a lock for New York, right? After what happened last night.
Did you see what Jackson Dart said on the sidelines? There's a little report of him standing on the sidelines during the Ole Miss game, and someone caught his lip reading, and it said he was saying Stefanski or Harbaugh. So I think that if your franchise quarterback wants one of those as well, obviously they're going through interviews right now, and they got to have certain amount of interviews. I know the Rooney Rule is still around, so obviously there's a lot of things that still need to go down. But yeah, I'm guessing one of them end up in New York for sure.
I would have to think so, but
Yeah,
we'll see if Miami grabs the Harbaugh to Miami thing feels like the answer to me, just because of the timing.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Personally, I think that's the right coach to bring your team back. He's a perfect guy to help rebuild a team. Look, he was not always a Super Bowl winner, but he did win a Super Bowl. But if you look at the Ravens record, he had one losing season in 18 seasons. And Miami would take that to the bank all day long. If you were a Miami fan who hasn't won the AFC East since Tony Sparano was your head coach in 2008, and I was to tell you that, hey, your next head coach is going to come in and he's going to coach for 10 years. And in those 10 years, you're going to have 9 winning seasons. The Miami Dolphins are going to say, where do I sign up?
Yeah. Yeah. I talked to some Miami fans early on this season. And they're like, man, at some point, I just kind of want to win.
That's it.
I just want to win games.
And could you imagine the culture of Miami football if you have John Harbaugh come in as your new head coach and you have a potential national championship college football team? The vibes would be very high in South Beach if that's the case.
They really would. They absolutely would. Yeah, we could be looking at over the next 3 years. I mean, Miami Hurricanes have started this, but as Miami Dolphins start to turn the chapter, we could get some elite football at South Beach or, kind of that South Florida region. This I feel like is good for the sport, personally.
I agree.
If it does go that way.
I agree, man.
That's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah. Get to it, man. I think you got something for me, right?
Yeah, we can do okay. I thought we were gonna run this after the next segment, so I'm not exactly prepared, but I was gonna do a start bench cut with you. Okay.
Okay, we can do that. You want to keep going? You want to keep rocking and rolling?
No, we can do it now. That's fine. Right. We'll do potentially, how about some head coaches, because we just got done with head coaching speak. And I think I'm gonna go with bigger head coaches right now because it's harder to pick which play. We're not necessarily talking about guys that are actually getting cut because and you would know who is going to get cut. So as far as coaches go that are in the playoff, which coach would you like to start, bench, or cut? I've got DeMeco Ryans with the Texans. I've got Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. And then the all-timer Mike Tomlin with the Steelers.
Man, what kind of roster do I have? Is that up in the air, or is it just straight up coaching? What do we got? It's just
the coaching. Like, take the best year of each coach or whatever, however you want to think about it.
Okay, well, as much as I think DeMeco Ryans is on his way up and what he's done with his defense is incredible, got to cut him because there's just 2 other legends on the board. So I'm gonna cut Ryan right off the bat just because, look, man, you're going up against 2 legends in the fold at this one.
It's just unfortunate. Doesn't want the future. Good to know. You don't want the future. You want the past. Good to know. Good to know.
I want a stable guy. We're talking playoff head coaches, you only got to have a couple wins to win in a playoff game. I want a guy that knows they can do it. I'm going to bench Harbaugh. Give me Mike Tomlin, man. Give me the guy that is always the sleeper, that loves being the underdog. Give me Mike Tomlin. Start Mike Tomlin, bench Harbaugh, cut Ryans.
Interesting. I threw Tomlin in there because I was like, I don't know. I feel like he's on the hot seat with a lot of Steelers fans. If they had made the playoffs this year, I think he would have been the guy that you cut. But I agree. And he goes immediately to the starting position. Why to throw him in there? I don't know if I would have gone the same route. I think I would have ended up with benching DeMeco because of the long-term play. Probably.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers effect. Okay. Sit him behind Favre for a little bit. That's smart.
Yep. Learn a little bit from Jim Harbaugh, who's going to start and end up cutting Tomlin, was kind of how I was thinking. But that's just personal.
That one. I think that's a good one.
It was good. Hey, fun little segment for us as we jump into our next topic.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one as well because we're not really talking head coaches here. We're going front office and we're going the future of the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard was retained as general manager for the Indianapolis Colts, and he talked for about 45 minutes on Thursday talking about the future of the organization. And one of the biggest things I got from it is that he is backing Daniel Jones as the Colts' future, and I don't think he has another choice. I think he has to do that. He has to bring back Daniel Jones. He has to lean heavily on that quarterback because look at his resume post Andrew Luck of quarterbacks, right? The Anthony Richardson experiment did not work out. Bringing Phillip Rivers was his best choice to make it back to the playoffs this past year. We'll see if Riley Leonard can turn out to be a solid backup. I don't know if that's the right case, but overall, bringing Daniel Jones is the answer. For the first half of the 2025 season, he was in the MVP race for a reason. You don't have a first-round pick this year. You traded it for Sauce Gardner. The best choice for Chris Ballard, for Shane Steichen, for all those people to get the Colts back to the playoffs in a tough AFC South where you have the Houston Texans, where you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you have potentially a Tennessee Titans team that's going to figure it out eventually because their young core looks at least decent. You gotta have a surefire thing at quarterback. And it's wild to say after seeing him in his Giant years that Daniel Jones is a surefire win for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, the Andrew Luck situation for Ballard is just really unfortunate. I don't think anybody's holding that against Ballard, but you're exactly right. It's everything.
People are definitely holding it against him. I'm going to push back, holding it against him.
Really?
Oh, for
Luck
sure.
Retiring out of nowhere. I think
so. Yeah, I think you have. I don't think it's right, but I think it's definitely pushing it against him. I think more recency bias. It's Anthony Richardson, but I think they definitely are.
I think that a lot of people would say that was the right play, was like everything that happened up until Luck. And then when Luck just out of nowhere was like, poof, out into the existence. Like, it was like, you kind of got the short end of the stick on that one. Like, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. The problem is with the benefit of the doubt, he hasn't done anything. So whether you disagree with how I feel about the Luck situation, since then, I think we can all agree it hasn't exactly gone well. And to kind of echo your point, because when you texted me that was what he said, I said immediately, that makes complete sense. He has to hitch his wagon to this guy. And my reasoning was, it's not necessarily about whether or not Daniel Jones is the GOAT or if he's an MVP next season or what he's capable of. This buys Ballard time. If Ballard is to move on from Jones and bring in a new guy, if it doesn't work out, that's it. You're done. But if he says, you know what, I think Jones is the guy, I think we might have to take a year or two to develop him and let him into the system and, maybe build the team around him. He's buying himself years and he can develop that. And if he's wrong, at the very least, he's got an extra 2 years out of the experiment. If they decide to go with, Riley Leonard, I almost said Lincoln Riley again. That's some Marv and Rauh lore for you there. But if they decide to bring in like a rookie quarterback or whatever, and it doesn't work out, I don't think that the timeline I don't think you get as long with a young quarterback. And generally, it's the opposite. They're like, okay, you got to wait for him to develop. I think if you're the Colts here, if you're Chris Ballard, you understand if you bring in a young guy, your clock is ticking immediately. He needs to make an impact now. After Daniel Jones and what he did last season, there was a glimmer. And I think Chris Ballard identified that and realized, if I can hang on to this, I'm going to get a little bit of extra time to build this team around him. And maybe he doesn't need to be this great quarterback. He can be a check down merchant, a game manager, as long as we get some talent at the wide receiver position and have a solid defense and a running back. Like, obviously they have Jonathan Taylor, build up the offensive line. Like, we don't need a superstar quarterback. I need time. I think that's how I viewed this as far as what Chris Ballard did.
You have Jonathan Taylor at running back. Great. DJ Giddens is a fantastic backup as well. You have a great running game. Your wide receiver core, could it be better? Sure. Especially if you don't sign Alec Pierce this offseason, you're going to have to do some spending there as well. Your offensive line is incredible. Even though Daniel Jones only played 13 games this past season, now he hasn't always had the most healthy seasons as well. He's only played one 16-game season. That was in 2022 for the Giants. The rest of the way, he's had some injury-riddled seasons, or he's been benched when it comes to the games he's played. He played 13 games for the Colts this past season, only sacked 22 times. That is the least amount of times he's ever been sacked. And if you want to go by average of sacks per game played, it's the lowest in his entire career. He did that in year one in Indianapolis. When I'm talking about Shane Ballard, when I'm talking about just guys past the retirement of Andrew Luck in 2019, all these names, think about them. 2019, Jacoby Brissett and Brian Hoyer. 2020, you had Phillip Rivers with that wild card run. 2021, you had Carson Wentz. In 2022, you continue to go back to the old man well with Matt Ryan. Then you had Nick Foles in the mix, and you had Sam Ellinger. 2023, you brought in Gardner Minshew, and then the Anthony Richardson experiment at the end of 23 and then 24. And then you continue to go with the old man approach and brought in Joe Flacco for a little bit last year. And then last year in 2025, you finally had at least a little bit of some longevity until the injury in Daniel Jones. The last 5-6 years post Andrew Luck has shown you one thing. You have tried to put a Band-Aid at the quarterback position.
Yes.
Daniel Jones for the first time. Anthony Richardson was the first attempt. It didn't work. But Daniel Jones for the first time is a proven quarterback in the league that can prove that he's no longer just a Band-Aid for the Indianapolis Colts. And I think that's all they need to get themselves to be back at the top of the AFC South.
I had forgotten how bad it is. Thank you for going back through that because you forget about guys like Matt Ryan or Carson Wentz, the double ankle sprain legend. I mean, I actually completely forgot about a lot of those guys, and it is a lot worse than I think a lot of people remember because it has been such a revolving door. Maybe Colts fans will tell me I'm wrong on that, but boy, it's exactly what he has to do. He has to hitch his wagon to somebody. It can't just be a new name every single year. Clearly that hasn't worked. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a bolt hole and being surprised when it gets saturated in 5 minutes. Like, what do you expect to happen? You're going to need something more than a little Band-Aid on that guy. So a Band-Aid is the exact right, metaphor there. And I think at this point he's calling for EMS. He's saying, you know what, we need to commit to actually doing something. If it doesn't work out, if we don't make it to the hospital, at least we died trying. And I guess I'm just curious what Colts fans think of this because, I actually do think Daniel Jones has a legitimate chance to be at the very least a guy who won't lose you games. Some of those names just either weren't capable, they were too old, or like guys even like Anthony Richardson, or I would argue Carson Wentz is in the conversation of like just too much risk. Like you're just going to throw games away with those guys. Carson Wentz is too dedicated to making plays and it ends up sometimes going the other direction. So I think this, as much as it's a move that makes entirely 100% sense from a career perspective for Ballard, I think this is also the right play for the Colts. I think you can't move on, start to get some stability at the quarterback position. And I think he has the talent to really take this team to at least an AFC South title.
His quote here makes me curious because it's either the fact that he's had some sort of like backdoor conversation with Daniel Jones to show like, hey, we're committed to you, or the fact that Chris Ballard thinks that Daniel Jones is going to get some traction on the market this free agency window. So he wants to put it out there that, hey, publicly, we're interested in you to return to Indianapolis. He says this, quote, I'm looking at him both near and in long term. When you're chasing the quarterback all the time, it makes it very hard. Your margin for error really shrinks down. And I feel very good about Daniel Jones and where he's at and where he's going. Yeah, he's got the Achilles, but I think Daniel Jones has a really bright future here in Indianapolis. At least he's transparent. At least he's self-aware that he knows that the last 6 years, the quarterback has just been a Band-Aid and you're chasing it all the time. And he finally wants to solidify that with a guy like Daniel Jones.
I mean, I like it. I do. I mean, we're very interested to see what happens to the Colts next season. I think this is make or break time. And when the 11th hour tolls, like for me at 11:59, I got to get that paper done. I have never typed faster in my life. If I go take a typing test right now, be like 50, 60 words per minute, whatever. When that essay is due in 10 minutes, I am typing 150 words per minute, my friend. So I'm excited to see the Colts step up to the plate, and they might have a phenomenal year next year. Who knows?
Let's end up the show with the week anniversary of the transfer portal. The portal's been open for officially 1 week now. There's about another week left. Closes on the 16th. But so far, there's been some wild names. Let's go through and let's give everybody 5 portal pieces that we think are perfect landing spots. I'll go first. I think that this is a really interesting piece here. And we talk about Ole Miss in the college football playoffs. Of course, what Pete Golding is doing. I really like the additions that he's added so far in the transfer portal as well. One thing he's done with recruiting has been a thing, but adding Jay Crawford, the cornerback from Auburn, from Ole Miss, I think is an absolute steal. I think what it does for Ole Miss's defense, it continues to show that they're not going to go away. That even though they lost the college football playoff semifinals, they're not going away. They're going to be a stud. They're going to continue to be an SEC powerhouse. He's not the only SEC transfer that Pete Golding has got as well. And I am very curious and almost kind of excited and almost kind of rooting for seeing Ole Miss be better than LSU next year.
I think they're going to. And you're exactly right. Like that's the underdog, kind of like they were wronged and they're going to make the most of it. I'm excited to see. I think they're very much in that conversation, especially if Chambliss comes back. And on the defensive side of the ball, Crawford, Really good year last year on an Auburn team that just wasn't all that good. I mean, they were okay, I guess,
Yeah.
if you want to make that argument.
Very
But
talented team, very underperforming team at Auburn.
yeah, that's the best way to put it. I didn't think they were super impressive. So, not going to have the best statistics, but a guy that can absolutely make a difference. And the cornerbacks for Ole Miss are already kind of some dogs. If you add this, Crawford into the mix here, I like that a lot. And, that's just, they're going to be the team out of the SEC to beat next year because
I
they were the
agree.
one
That's
that made it the
wild to say.
furthest.
Wild
Just
to think about.
insane. Yeah. And
Who
then
would have
as they're
thought?
reloading.
Who would have thought that we'd be here right now in January? Lane Kiffin leaves Old Miss, and we're telling you after Old Miss has been eliminated from college football playoff contention that you're like, you know what? Who's going to be the favorite next year in the SEC? Old Miss. It's wild. Or who do you got for a portal piece that you really like?
I'm just going to take a name that I loved. We talked about this multiple times on here, actually. Nick Marsh ended up going to Indiana. Look, the guy is just electric. I saw some of his highlights, which I know isn't actual tape. They're just highlights. I understand that. But it was kind of similar to what we got last night in Malachi Toney a little bit. Just ridiculous speed. Catch radius is off the charts. He's a weapon. And Kurt Signetti, obviously, I don't think we put Josh Hoover on this list. If we did, I spoke too early and I apologize. But Josh Hoover getting to throw to Nick Marr, this is going to be, Indiana's going to be a problem. If Ole Miss is the team to beat out of the SEC, Indiana's the team to beat, just period. They're reloading better than anybody. And to bring in my opinion, what was the number one wide receiver in the class, there are going to be a problem. This is a name that I was excited to see anywhere he went, but because he's going to play for one of the best programs, he's going to be on the national stage. He's going to be on SportsCenter top 10 consistently, and I cannot wait to watch some Indiana football.
Yeah, 6'3", 203. He's going to be a junior out of Detroit, Michigan. Really impressive kid. Had 662 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns this past season. Now you're going to go from
on Michigan State.
Michigan State. Now you're going to go to Josh Hoover in Indiana, who also brought in Turbo Richard as their running back. They're reloading, and it's a really impressive team. Yeah, I think Indiana is going to be really good, and I think you could see a breakout year from a guy like Nick Marsh as well. I really like that landing spot. I think you could have picked any of Indiana's transfers and said it was a perfect spot because they're absolutely cooking in the transfer portal. I'm going to go a running back here that maybe you forgot about, but if you've watched college football over the last couple of years, you'll remember this name, Mekhi Hughes. He's going to be transferring from Oregon, heading to Houston, and he didn't have a great year in Oregon. He kind of got buried on the depth chart in Oregon. This kind of shows you that the transfer portal isn't always for the best. He left Tulane under John Summerall, and he was fantastic. He was seen as one of the best running backs in college football in 2023 and 2024. In 2024, he had over 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns just on the ground. Goes to Oregon, only gets 17 touches for 70 yards. Just doesn't work out for him. Now he's going to go to Houston. And I think Houston is turning out to be the dark horse team in the Big 12. What they've done, their recruiting class is incredible. They're bringing in some good portal pieces. I mean, it's been a really impressive run for what Houston's done. Would not surprise me in the slightest that when the Big 12 is over in 2026, teams like Houston are battling with Texas Tech and BYU for the top spot in that conference. And a guy like Mekhi Hughes, who's going to try and get himself back in that NFL stock range, is going to do that down in Texas. Exciting stuff for Mekhi Hughes. I really like his pickup.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad move. And when you talk about Houston and what they did, talk about just a not career, because it's not the career, but a program defining year. And it was all because of a schedule. The way that I see this, they beat SF Austin, Rice, Colorado at home, Oregon State on the road, and then they face Texas Tech and they lose. Then they take on Oklahoma State at home, Arizona, which I guess was a decent opponent. Arizona State was okay. They lost to West Virginia, and UCF, they beat TCU. They lost to Baylor. They won. We were having real conversations ahead of the West Virginia team or game where Houston had a shot at making a Big 12 title game, and they had basically only played Texas Tech. They ended up dropping 2 of those last 4, but the success from this last season, because of what maybe was one of the easiest schedules in all of college football, a lot of people would say, I would say definitely one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12, led to the success that can bring in names like Mekhi Hughes. And this guy can make a massive impact down the road. look out for Houston over the next few years. You could easily point to this last season and say, oh, but they didn't really play anybody. They weren't that good. But I like to say winning leads to more winning. You bring in better players. You bring in, better coaches. Obviously, you lose guys all the time too. That's the nature of college sports. But yes, Mekhi Hughes is a massive pickup. And I just honestly look more towards what Houston did this last season. And like, it's a crazy the way the chips fall for the Cougars. Now, I have another one for you. I'm going to throw your way. Jontez Williams, name from Iowa State, everybody's familiar with. You can see, obviously, from my background, I'm familiar. Thought for sure he was going out to Penn State. He ended up committing to USC, University of South Carolina. It's not Carolina, California. And that's going to shake up a lot of the Big Ten. I looked at what USC's pass defense was this year. I think passing yards per game, they were in the 40s. I can't remember. It's 45, 46, something like that. Not very good. Jontez Williams has been a massive piece of Iowa State's defense, especially in the secondary over the last 2 years, I would say, is where he's made the biggest impact. You could probably argue a little bit more than that, but this is a huge pickup for USC, who's trying to get back on the map in a very tough Big Ten. I think this is actually the right move for him as far as gaining some draft stock as well. So he's going to be out there ready to ball out. Stays in the red and gold, I guess. Technically, Iowa State's cardinal and gold, so relatively similar colors. But excited about what USC could do on the defensive side of the ball next season. Yeah,
they need a ball hawk, man. If it's not for other than Bishop Fitzgerald, their safety, who had 5 interceptions in the season, no other defensive back, no other player on USC had more than 1 interception on the season. They need a ball hawk, and I think Jontez Williams is the perfect guy to do that as well. He's a guy that has NFL draft caliber status, no doubt about that. So I'll be interested to see what they do. I mean, obviously USC is going to be coming off a tough Alamo Bowl loss, to TCU. That overtime loss was incredible, and we'll see if they can step up. And a guy like Jontez Williams will be certainly interesting. Let's end it with this one, number 5 here. I think we got to put a quarterback on the list somehow, some way. And I don't know, I'm going to ask you, do you think this is the perfect landing spot for a guy like Brennan Sorsby at Texas Tech?
Okay. I would say more for Texas Tech, this is the right fit than Brennan Sorsby. I think I see this as Texas Tech needs to win right now, and I think Brennan Sorsby gives you the best chance at that. I think what he did in Cincinnati was extremely impressive, and Texas Tech was only a quarterback away. This is the right fit for Texas Tech. Would you say this is the right system potentially for Brennan Sorsby?
That's an interesting thing. That's what I'm curious about. Are they going to let him run the football? Are they going to shift their offensive identity? Because obviously with Baron Morton, that wasn't the thing, right? This is a guy that can do both. He is a true dual threat quarterback, and maybe now the best dual threat quarterback in the Big 12 because Sam Levitt's no longer there. I think Avery Johnson still deserves a little bit of love for that portion. But this past year, Cincinnati, 2,800 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, was only sacked 7 times. And he's going to be behind a really good offensive line at Texas Tech. He rushed for almost 600 yards as well with 9 touchdowns. He was responsible for 36 touchdowns. That's a lot of offensive performance. That's a lot of things that Texas Tech needs. I think you got to find a way to give him a little bit of weapons. If you do that, though, I think you have a really impressive, a very impressive offense for Texas Tech. I don't know if I want to say this is the perfect landing spot, although that's what we talked about with these topics. I don't know if it's the perfect landing spot yet. I think it could be. You're right. They got to change their offensive identity for Brennan Sorsby, but the way they looked in that Oregon game in that college football playoffs, it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I think this was the right play, and I think you really have to let him be him for this to work out to its maximum potential. And I think Texas Tech maybe understands that, but I think they got an upgrade at the quarterback position if you're looking organizationally. And for Brennan Sorsby, we all know his pocketbook is certainly boosted. So he made the right move in that regard. Very excited about what, I guess not so much as an Iowa State fan, but we could see a Big 12 team make a ton of noise next season. We just haven't really seen that up until this point. Brennan Sorsby will be leading that charge.
We made it through an entire Friday show without a single breaking news dropping while we were live today. So you know what that means. As soon as we stop, something is going to drop for sure. Something live is going to drop. This is exactly what happens every time. I really appreciate everybody chiming in.
We appreciate everyone dropping in. I got a passion segment for you real quick. This one I'm throwing at you. We didn't prep this. when we were talking about it, and it crossed my mind. Can we get rid of the whole playoffs or bowl games crap? I got to watch Mario Cristobal lift a trophy he doesn't care about because he's going on to the national championship right after this. What are we doing? We're killing two birds with one stone here. Why are we doing this? Is the Citrus Bowl, but it's also part of the playoffs. Like, you're playing for your next game. Be happy you won this trophy. You're going to go win multiple bowl games. The whole thing doesn't make sense to me. Let's go ahead and just call it the playoffs. If you make the playoffs, sorry, you didn't make a bowl game. Like, I think that's what it has to be. You made it into make getting in a bigger deal, I guess, and then get rid of the, when we're like Tulane, like that game doesn't need to be a bowl game. Those early games, even the semifinals. I think the semifinals honestly make even less sense because you've already won a bowl game to get to a bowl game, unless you had none of this makes sense to me. What do you think of this?
I love that idea. Yes, because those bowl games that you have are prestigious bowl games, and I don't think they need to sit inside the college football playoffs. Put them on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve or Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, and you put them on actual big time bowl games for teams that did not make the college football playoffs. Like, how excited have we been about the Citrus Bowl? How excited have we been about the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Right? Those bowl games have been incredible. They've been incredible. So if you put them in just the regular mix of teams that are not fighting for anything else, I think you'd be able to make bowl games more fun and more respectable again. Now, obviously, money's the big reason. That's why it's the case. Everybody wants to be involved in the college football playoffs because there's a lot of money. There's a lot of people watching. There are way more people watching the college football playoffs than there are people watching the Cure Bowl between Old Dominion and USF, right? That's just a thing. But if you got rid of the aluminum bowl, if you got rid of the peanut butter and jelly bowl, if you got rid of the water bottle bowl, and you put some of the, you see what things are around me right now, and you see and you put the Fiesta Bowl, you put the Rose Bowl, you put those things actually inside the bowl games, like not in the college football playoffs, I'm all for that. If you had Texas and Michigan in the Rose Bowl or something like that, that game would have had a lot more fire. Now, it was really good in the Citrus, or in whatever bowl they played in, but I think it was the Citrus. But yeah, if you would have been able to find those ones, I'm all for that. I'm with you. I love this passion one. I love the way we're ending this today.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. It does not make sense to me. And then, so what? The national championship game is not a bowl game? I just looked this up. It's the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl lead to just the national championship game, which is not a bowl game because
and that's weird because when there was BCS, you just switched the bowl game every couple of years. It was either the Fiesta Bowl, it was either the Orange Bowl, it was the Rose Bowl. So if the national championship game is not hosted by a bowl this year, then that's a problem. And I think you're right. I don't think there is one.
I don't think it is. And so that even raises more questions for me because so your first round is bowl games. Okay, I can get behind the first round being bowl games. That's fine. Every team that makes the playoff then is in a bowl game, I guess, if you want to make that argument. But then what about the teams that have a bye? Okay, so then the second round has to have a bowl game, I guess, if you really want to play that
college
card.
Football Playoff National Championship presented by AT&T. It's not an actual bowl.
So that's a massive load. So then the argument is, okay, teams that have a bye need to play in a bowl game. Okay, that's fine. So then Indiana got to play in the Rose Bowl. But then the semifinals, so you won a bowl game and potentially two bowl games to make it to a bowl game. Okay. But now we're going to break the pattern and you don't win 3 bowl games to get to a bowl game anymore. Now you're just winning bowl games to play in a game, which is titled the national championship. Look, the whole system is broken. We understand that. There's nothing about the playoffs or the playoff entry format or anything about, honestly, anything in college football that makes sense right now. But that one was one that, to me, you threw out there like they played in this bowl game, whatever. It made me think of it like, what are we doing? Because Mario Cristobal looked upset about being up there on that stage. And I was like, I'm kind of upset that I got to watch this. What are we doing? Get them back to the locker room. They got a game next week. Like, what are we even talking about? Or what, 10 days or whatever it is. I don't know. My point is, it just feels silly. And I think if you were to like basically eliminate bowl games except for the national championship, maybe that's unfair to the teams that don't make it. But then the national championship is like this massive bowl game that everyone's trying to get to. I don't know. There's just got to be a better way than if you play in a bowl game, then you play in another bowl game, then you play in another bowl game, then you don't play in one, but you might play in 2, but you might play in 3, but you might play in none. It just doesn't make any sense to me, man. I don't know. That's just something that popped in my mind.
Insane stuff. Enjoy college football tonight. Hopefully set up for another banger. NFL playoffs over the weekend. And come right back Monday morning to check out Marv and Rauh in the morning, because we'll have you covered with a full power hour to get your Monday morning started. And make sure you're ready to roll, because there's a lot of sports to talk about. There's for sure. And I'm sure there's going to be a Friday news dump as soon as I end this live. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next time right here on Marv and Rauh in the morning.